This is Major Peter Abidian of the United States Air Force, honorably discharged. I'm the Oral History Director of Post 41 AmVets, the Corporal Paul S. Marsubian Post in Watertown, Massachusetts. We are conducting today an oral history of one of our fellow veterans, Peter J. Abidian of Belmont, Massachusetts. Peter was in the United States Army, and he was in the front lines during World War II. And we're going to go over some of his experiences in World War II, briefly his background, education, training, and he is going to recount to us some of his feelings, his experiences, and his views about the service. As veterans, we particularly know the price of freedom. We know what it takes to keep America free and secure, and we know the price of freedom and the responsibilities of citizenship. So what we're going to do here is we're going to recount in a very informal way some of the reminiscences, whatever he recalls with regard to his experiences in the service. Is that okay with you, Peter?
Fine.
All right. And with that, what I'm going to do is to move to one side and zoom in on you and start with some initial questions. All right? Is that okay?
Okay, good.
All right, here we go. Okay, Peter, why don't we start out, if you will, by telling us where you were born.
I was born in Providence, Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm. And your father's name?
My father's name is John.
And your mother's name?
Agnes.
Uh-huh. And they came over from the old country?
They did.
And I think you had mentioned that they were in Ankara?
My father was born in Ankara.
Mm-hmm.
My mother's from Mazadeh Harpert.
Okay.
They met in Aleppo, Syria.
Mm-hmm.
They were married there, and they came here in 1920.
So they went through the genocide?
Yes, they were both refugees.
And refugees of the genocide?
Yes.
And they came from Aleppo and through Marseille? By way of Marseille, France?
Yes.
Okay. Did they meet any relatives in Marseille that you know?
No.
Okay. And it's strange that you've mentioned before that you actually went to Marseille during your military service.
I did.
And that would be about 20, 30 years later. All right? Okay. So you they went to Providence. That's where you're born and brought up. You were born in Providence, and you were then moved 4 months later?
To Massachusetts.
Okay. And to Chelsea?
Yes.
All right. And how long did you stay in Chelsea?
About 17 years.
And from there you went to Winthrop? Okay. And were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
All right. And did you have any particular skills at the time that you were drafted?
Not really.
You had a high school education?
Yes, I went to Chelsea High School.
Mm-hmm. Why did you join the service?
I was drafted.
Well, why did you? Why you didn't have any choice, did you?
I had no choice.
How did you feel about being drafted?
Well, there was the thing to do at the time. Well, friends were drafted. I was drafted. There wasn't any big deal.
You had no feeling of protest?
No, not at all.
Okay. And did you have some choice as to what branch of service you would like to go to?
Well, before I was drafted, I volunteered for the Air Force, but then I realized that I don't even like airplanes, and I changed my mind and canceled that, but then I was drafted into the Army. To answer your question, I didn't have any say as to where I was going to go.
Right.
I just followed the rules and regulations of where they sent me, the basic training.
Tell me about where you were inducted and how you were inducted.
In Devens, Fort Devens.
And from there?
From there to Camp Swift for basic training. Camp Swift is in Texas.
I think you mentioned Camp Edwards before that.
Camp Edwards
was after.
That's when I was discharged.
Okay. So you went to Camp Swift,
Right, for basic training.
basic training there.
3 months.
Okay. And from Camp Swift, you went to?
I was chosen to go to the Army Specialized Training Program to Texas A&M.
This Army Specialized Training Program, was there any specialty that you wanted to go
I
into?
thought of medicine, but they couldn't, there was no opening for that, so they put me in an engineering program.
All right. And you went through the Army Specialized Training Program there, and what happened after that?
Then about 9 months later, the government decided they needed more infantrymen.
Mm-hmm.
So they pulled about 110,000 of us from all over the country from the ASTP program back into the infantry.
And
So then I
from,
went to Camp House. We trained for another 6 months or so, and then we went overseas.
okay. And from Camp House, I believe you said you went by troop train to New York, and then by ship
And
to
then
Marseille,
ship,
France.
yeah.
Okay.
Liberty ship. to
All right.
Marseille, France.
We're all set.
Morning,
Mm-hmm.
in the kitchen.
Really?
And we get up at 6 o'clock. I think we slept an hour, maybe an hour and a half,
Mm-hmm.
if we could sleep an hour and a half. And then we went back to Reveille and duty.
That was it.
That was it.
So,
Other than that, it was,
yeah.
it was discipline, marches. I didn't mind walking. We had an 18-mile hike one time. And I don't drink much water. I
Yeah.
had my canister, it was half full when I came back.
Uh-huh.
And I could do a jig. The walking never bothered me. I walk 18 miles, no problem.
18 mile hike.
18-mile hike, right.
Full pack?
I didn't I don't know if it was a full pack or not, but it was 18 miles, I remember that.
Mhm.
But I didn't mind that. I didn't like running at all. But
Mhm.
walking, I could walk for all day.
So, when you went from Camp Swift to Camp
I went to Texas A&M.
Texas A&M,
Right.
but you said there was another camp that you went to
That
after
was later.
Swift.
I was afterwards.
Oh, I see. So you went to Texas A&M.
Excuse me.
And what was the program that you,
Texas A&M was a regular college program.
no, you had said that they wanted to put you in a special program that the Army had.
In Texas A&M?
AS something or other?
No, at Texas A&M, I thought, they asked me to choose what I wanted to study, and I had an idea, I wanted to study medicine.
Mhm.
But they didn't have openings for that, so they gave me engineering.
Mhm.
And they had physical training. At Texas A&M, they had the largest dining room under one roof in the country. I think they could seat 1,700 people at one sitting.
Really?
Yeah, it was a very huge place. The Aggies, the regular students, waited on us. I mean, we were treated very well.
Mhm.
And they had B-5 Navy, they had Aggies. I don't know if they had Marines. They had the ASTP. They had 3 or 4 different types of
What is ASTP?
Army Specialized Training Program.
That's the program that you were in
I
when
was
you
I
would,
thought the idea was to make us officers eventually.
Mhm.
But as I say, it was interrupted because they needed more infantrymen. So I think it was 110,000 over the country they took from ASTP and back into the infantry. That's when they sent me to Camp House, after about 9 months at Texas A&M.
Did any of your experience at Texas A&M help you in your service later on?
Not really.
Not really. Yeah,
No,
so
because it was,
they just directed you one place and then they terminated that and sent you to Camp
yeah,
House.
we went back to the infantry.
Okay. Now, where was Camp House? In Denton, Texas, did you say?
Where's what?
Camp House,
Camp House, Howze, that's up in the northern part, too.
northern part.
Northern, because I used to go to Denton and Dallas and Houston. That's where I used to go on weekends.
So you had you had an opportunity to interact with the local color, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you?
Met a few girls there.
Yeah. How did you like the extracurricular activities?
Texas?
You
I
went
thought
out.
Texas people were very, very friendly.
Mhm.
They're very friendly people, they're nice people.
Did they detect an accent, your accent, their accent?
I don't remember, they probably didn't say anything about it.
Uh-huh. So what did you do at Camp House? You prepared for being an infantryman?
Again, infantry training, and I guess gearing us for going overseas.
Okay. And what kind of training were you involved in there?
Infantry,
Like,
marching, and probably rifle practice,
Mhm.
and heavy weapons we had the carbine. We didn't have the M1.
You didn't.
No, we had the carbine because I was an ammunition bearer overseas.
Bayonet training?
Probably, right.
Okay. You had said earlier in your story that you were introduced to the war. The first introduction you had to your war was seeing 2 dead Germans.
Right.
Were you psychologically prepared to kill people?
If we had to, of course.
But you said that was a bit of a shock.
Well, it was a shock to see 2 young men die. I mean, I'd never been
Yeah.
in a war before.
Yeah.
That was my first introduction to it.
Right.
Obviously, if you see 2 people dead,
Yeah.
it's a shock, and it's more of a shock if you're in a uniform and you see someone else in a uniform, be it a comrade or an enemy.
Right.
They're enemies.
Right.
I mean, we're there for the United States.
But you were also trained to do the killing.
Of course. Of
Right.
course.
Right.
But I was an ammunition bearer, so our machine gun did most of the work.
Yeah. You were an ammunition bearer.
I didn't man the machine.
I see.
Machine gun.
Okay.
I was more or less in the background.
Okay. So the weapons you were trained on at Camp House were the carbine and the machine gun?
Yeah.
Was it a 50 caliber?
50 caliber.
Yeah. Well, how do you train on a 50 caliber machine gun?
I didn't do that.
You didn't do that?
No.
You were the weapons bearer.
Well, yeah, I was weapons.
Well, they bring
And
these
bayonet
boxes.
probably, which I never fortunately had to use.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what else did you do at Camp House?
That's about it.
That's about it. Okay. And how long were you there?
Well, I was there from, I guess I went in June. That's about 6 months.
6
7
months. Mhm.
6, 7 months before we went overseas.
All right. And how'd you get overseas? Air or ship?
We took, it was a Liberty ship, I think about 5,000 people on it, and I got terribly seasick for 4 days.
Where'd you embark?
We embarked at Marseille.
I'm sorry. Where did you
Oh, we
board?
embarked, I'm sorry, disembark. We left from,
Houston?
no,
Corpus Christi?
I don't remember.
But it was at a place in
We
Texas.
must have gone to New York and got on the ship there. I don't remember leaving from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I think-
Troop train to New York?
I don't remember.
Don't remember?
It's funny, I just don't remember that.
That's okay. That's all right. So you were aboard a Liberty ship,
Yeah.
and you were headed towards directly to France, or did you go by way of
Directly to
England?
France, to Marseille, and it took about 10 days. As I say, I was very seasick, and it was the worst feeling I can remember, because the only relief you could get would be to vomit, and I didn't.
Mhm.
So it was worse, it was one of those things. But then again,
What time of year was this now?
this is in October.
Yeah. So you have a little bit of rolling seas there, and you
Must
have
have been, right.
yeah, yeah. How are the accommodations on the Liberty ship?
Not good.
Not good.
Yeah, we had a little place to sleep in the hole.
You did have a hammock.
I'm sorry?
You slept on these hammocks,
I
or
guess
bunks.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. Bunks,
You didn't have to take turns sleeping on deck and on the bottom, did you?
can't remember.
Yeah. And how did you get fed
How did
on
what?
these? How'd you get fed on these Liberty ships? Do they have cafeterias or restaurants, or what did you do for food?
Well, they had, I guess they had a cafeteria that we ate in.
Really?
In the whole of the ship, I guess. I don't remember, to be honest with
Of
you.
course, you
I can't remember.
you
where
probably
we-
didn't have any appetite being seasick.
Well, when I got sick, I couldn't, of course. They said the best antidote was to go down and eat, but you couldn't. It was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And then, then you get better and then you go along with it. But I remember we were in France when they were marching along one night. We'd been marching maybe 10 hours or more. I turned to a fellow I walked with, and I said, as bad as I feel right now and as tired as I feel, this is great compared to the seasickness.
Really?
The seasickness was something unusual. Whereas if you're marching along, you're tired, it's a normal tired feeling. You don't have the nausea.
Yeah. So the seasickness was probably one of the worst sicknesses you.
Yeah, it's
You had.
It's a very hard thing to
Yeah.
describe. And then when you're overseas, when I'm talking about it, you really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the feeling that you have is that you're over there, you're following instructions, you have nothing to say about it, and your fear is mitigated by the fact that you really don't know what's going on. As you're fully conscious of what's going on, you'd be more frightened than if you didn't. So when you're with a lot of buddies and you're all doing the same thing, and you know you're in a war, and you haven't been wounded, as some of my comrades were, then you feel lucky. And you just go along with,
And you do what you're told.
you do it because you have to do it.
How were the directions that were given to you? Were they rather clear?
Well, there wasn't much to worry about directions because, yeah, they were clear, of course,
Yeah.
because it was a chain of command.
Okay.
The company commander gave it to the sergeant, he gave it to us, and whatever we did together. There was no problem. There was one thing that we noticed. We had a sergeant that in the States was a bully. He really, I don't want to use a bad word, but he wasn't a very nice guy. But he broke up when we went overseas. He fell apart.
He did?
They had to take him off the front lines.
Really?
He fell apart. He couldn't take it. And he was supposed to be a tough guy.
Something like shell shock, or
No, he just
fell
he
apart?
got rattled. He got
did?
rattled.
Uh-huh.
He got frightened. I mean, everybody else was taking it, but he couldn't take it. He
Really?
was the guy who was picking on everybody. He was
Oh,
a
yeah.
big guy.
Uh-huh.
So that was kind of interesting.
Tell me how you felt when you arrived at Marseille. Marseille is in southern France,
Yes,
right?
it's a southern.
Was it a little warm?
port.
Was it warm there?
Well,
What's the weather like?
well, we didn't know what was next and where we were going, so they put us on trucks, and they sent us up to the Vosges Mountains, which is
Vosges?
the North Vosges, V-O-S-G-E-S. That's near Alsace.
Uh-huh.
It's in Alsace. Alsace, which is next to Germany, of course. Strasbourg is on the border.
So the army had pretty much pushed the Germans back by the time you got there.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
They'd already gone to Paris.
Okay.
uh,
So they trucked you to Alsace from
To the
Marseille?
mountains, yeah, in trucks.
Uh-huh.
We went up there.
Were you able to interact with local people there? Do you have any time for that?
One thing that I should mention is my father's relatives all live in France.
Uh-huh.
So I had two uncles there and two aunts. So I went up there. I think I saw my uncle before I went up to the front lines.
That was in
One of my
Marseille?
uncles who lived in France, in Marseille. I saw him, and then my other uncle also. Well, I didn't see them then, but they came to me at the hospital when I was in Aix, after when I was wounded and so forth.
Right, right. You had mentioned that your parents had come from Aleppo to the United States through Marseille,
Right.
and that, was it your uncle that had, or your uncle's family that had helped them on their way to the United
My uncles
States?
weren't living there then.
They weren't living there?
No, they weren't living.
Okay, so there's
My
no
father was
relation.
the oldest child of the family.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
No, they weren't even there. They were still in Turkey when they came.
I see. So, other than your own relatives, did you have an opportunity to interact with the local people?
Hardly at all, because we were just in the front lines. As I say, one night, we slept in a barn, and I think another night, yeah, that was the night I think we went into a kitchen in a house.
Uh-huh.
Other than that, we were in the fields, in foxholes.
Uh-huh. So, when you arrived at that
Front lines,
front line near Alsace, is it?
Alsace.
Alsace, what did your activity consist of? Digging trenches and digging foxholes?
We dig the trenches to get to be able to establish our line, I guess. I mean, I didn't know what was going on.
Were these trenches that had already been dug, say in World War I or
I think
before then?
I'm not even sure if we dug them, or I think they were probably there.
There were.
Yeah, they must have been there, because I don't remember digging them. I don't know why they were there, though. I can't remember.
How long were you in the trenches?
Well, we're in the trenches all the time. I mean,
For how long a period of time?
each trench, you mean?
Yeah, no, trench life, so to speak.
Well, for about 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the time I was overseas until I was taken from the front lines because of my feet.
Trench foot, yeah.
Legs.
You went from one trench to the other?
Yeah, right.
Would that be,
If we didn't have them, we dug them, I guess.
yeah, would that represent an advance towards the Germans, or?
Probably,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. Describe trench life for me.
Trench
What
life.
was it like? You spent
It's
3 months there.
kind of a blur. It's kind of a blur because all I know is we were there, and we were in the trenches. When you say trenches, you know, it's like a foxhole. Let's say it was 6 feet deep and 3 feet wide and 6 or 8 feet long.
Mhm.
And maybe 6 or 8 people in one trench.
Okay.
That's all it was. I don't know what we did there, to be honest with you. I don't know what we did.
And this would be sometime in October, November that you arrived
I
there?
was there in October, yeah, November, December, and January, till the end of January.
That was a cold season.
Yeah, it was terrible. You know,
Yeah.
Snow and cold and.
How were you equipped?
Well, we had a,
In winter uniforms?
well, we had the, yeah, we weren't dressed up. I mean, we had the regular.
No, what I'm saying is, was the equipment,
Yeah, it was adequate.
was the equipment adequate for
It
the
was
weather?
adequate, but we had heavy socks. That's probably caused the trench foot, because for 5 days, I wasn't able to change it or take them off for some reason or other. And that's to hurt the circulation of my legs.
And what did you have for foot gear?
For what?
For foot gear?
Well, we had the regular boots, I guess.
Boots. And was the trenches, were they moist? Did they have water in them? Did they leak into your feet?
Could have been, I don't remember. If there was snow, it'd be water. If there wasn't snow, there wouldn't be any.
Mhm.
But, let's see.
Do you recall using your weapons in the trenches?
I never used
Never did.
a weapon.
So what did you do when you were in the trench?
I don't know. I don't
You don't
know.
recall?
Just wait for orders.
Uh-huh.
The one night that we slept in a house, that's
Uh-huh.
when we got the call that the SS men were up there.
Mhm.
4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. We went back to the trenches. And the
Mhm.
heavy weapons got out there, and I guess the machine guns were blasting.
Mhm.
There's a big difference between our machine guns and the Germans. Ours was going pop, 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 and theirs went trrrr.
Really?
It was much faster.
They
So
had-
you could tell that.
You feel they had better weapons than we did?
Well, it sounded like it. I
It
don't
sounded
think
much
that-
more rapid fire.
Much more rapid, yeah. The Germans, I guess, were good soldiers,
Mhm.
but we won.
Yeah, that's what makes it important. That's what makes it important. Okay, so after your stay in the trenches, you contracted trench foot, and you came back to the hospital.
They sent me to the hospital,
Where was that?
Dijon. That's in southern France.
Was that a
More south.
French hospital, or was it?
French, yeah, in France.
The French took care of you.
Yeah. And then there's nothing much they could do for it, they said, and they sent me down to the American hospital, Aix-en-Provence. That's in southern France, not far from Marseille.
Okay.
And I stayed there from, well, it must have been the end of first part of February until May.
You say that there was nothing they could do for you.
There was nothing they could do.
How did they treat you if?
Nothing. They just had
They
to
just-
wait.
just-
And for 3 weeks, I couldn't get out of bed. I
Uh-huh.
couldn't walk at all. And little by little, I was able to walk.
Were there other people with your same affliction?
There was a fellow next to me who had a worse case of it. His was really bad. He was a fellow from St. Louis, I remember.
Mhm.
His name was Rufa.
And did you talk about it?
Yeah, we talked about it.
Did you eventually get over the illness?
Well, when I came back to the States, they said they could do a bilateral sympathectomy, which I wondered about, and I talked to a cousin who was a physician. He said it's kind of a risky operation. He argued against it, and I never had it done. But then it, subsided, and I'm able to get along.
It did eventually subside?
Yeah, it subsided, and it's sensitive to heat and cold. My ankles are still swollen, but I live with it.
Mhm.
And there's nothing
So you were given a medical discharge?
medical discharge.
Okay. Now, do you recall the day that the Germans surrendered?
The day when?
When the Germans surrendered?
Well, we were on the ship coming back when the war was over. I remember that.
Liberty ship?
May 8th, I believe it was.
Was it a Liberty ship or a hospital ship?
We were, no, in the regular ship coming back.
Uh-huh.
It was on the Mariposa. I remember the name of it. It used to be a luxury ship between San Francisco and Hawaii, they told me.
Uh-huh.
The Mariposa, which was a much better ride than the one going over. But I remember the jubilation we felt when the war was over. It was a fabulous feeling to know it was all over.
Really?
I mean,
How many people were on board that ship?
not as many as the Liberty ship, maybe 1,000 or 2,000, I don't
Yeah.
know.
And you say the accommodations were a little better.
Probably better, probably. I don't know what they were, but they were decent, I guess.
But you were going to have a medical discharge,
Yeah.
and you knew you were going to come home anyway, but when you heard that the United States was victorious, you still felt
Of course,
quite
it
happy.
was a terrible, terrible, wonderful feeling
Mhm.
to know the war was over and our buddies were no longer in danger.
Mhm.
You know, we're still part of the group.
Right. When you were in the trenches, did you at all feel any particular amount of stress?
Stress?
Yeah.
Not anything inordinate.
Mhm.
I mean, the same stress anybody else feels of being over there as a doughboy, so to speak,
Right.
not knowing which way is up.
Would you, did you correspond with your family regularly?
From there,
Yeah.
I don't think we could.
Mhm.
I may have written a letter or two, I don't remember.
But up to the time that you went overseas, did you correspond with them?
I'm sure I did.
Called them,
Yeah,
telephone?
I'm sure, yeah, I kept in touch.
Okay. And from the time that you went into the service, from your stay at Fort Devens, Fort Swift, Texas A&M, and Camp House, were you in regular contact with your parents?
Yes,
Did you ever have an opportunity to go back home on leave or furlough?
yes, I did have a furlough at Texas A&M.
Okay. And how did they feel when you came home? They're happy to see you?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Mother and father were there, and my brother was in the Pacific.
Mhm.
He served in the Pacific.
You have a brother who was in the service?
Yes, he was in the Pacific.
What was his name?
John,
John. And what was his rank
he was a technical sergeant. He was in communications
in the Army?
in the Army, right?
Uh-huh. And who got out of the service first, you or he?
About the same time. I
About the
think
same
I may
time.
have gotten out. I don't remember exactly. He served just about 2.5 years also.
Mm-hmm.
He went in a month later, maybe, or 2 months later, and got out about the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you went home on leave or furlough, did you go by air or train? Or
Train.
Train.
I didn't like to fly. I took a train.
You went from Texas all the way to
Yes, I like trains.
Massachusetts on a train?
I had a month's furlough when I was in Texas A&M because I'd done well in my grades, so they gave us the maximum furlough was a month, and that's what they gave me.
Did you make any close friendships while you were in the service?
Yes, I did.
Name some of the friends that you had, or describe them.
Well, I had, the name of Bishop I was very friendly with, from Illinois, when I was at Texas A&M. The other ones, I don't even remember the names, to be honest.
But you went out with the boys, so to speak?
Yeah,
Okay. And did you, I don't suppose that you thought about the military as a career after
Not
you
really.
came back?
not really. I never gave it a thought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, when you say you saw these 2 dead Germans when you were in the front lines.
That fascinates you, doesn't it?
Yes. It fascinates me because you say you were never in combat.
Well, they're
And-
right in front of the foxhole that we dug,
Uh-huh.
and then we just did the
They
first.
just happened to be there.
Yeah, just happened, the first day that we hit the lines.
Right.
We go to a foxhole, and then we look there, and the 2 guys lying there, right in front of us. I mean, that was a little unusual. I mean,
It was.
They could have been, 30 yards away or something.
It could have been anywhere.
It could have been anywhere. They happened to be right there. It was
Yeah.
a wake-up call, I guess you call it.
Yeah, yeah.
A
So,
reminder of what we're doing there.
did you, yeah, when you say it was a wake-up call, did it do anything to get you serious about killing your enemy?
No, I just felt bad that there's a war going on, and a war, in my opinion, is a result of the man's stupidity, not
Yeah.
being able to get along. I
Right.
don't care what war it is.
All right.
I mean, if people could realize that if I'm good to you, you're going to be good to me, and we're both going to be better off, then there wouldn't be any war. War is a result of man's stupidity. That's all it is.
That's when
the reason
diplomacy
why people
fails.
are all fighting all over the place.
Okay.
Because if somebody attacks you, you've got to defend yourself.
You have no choice.
You have no choice. You've got to do that.
Were you, you say you heard weapons going off,
Of course.
88s, artillery,
Machine gun.
things like that? Was
Well,
it
when
mostly
I-
machine gun fire?
Well, let me say this, interrupt you for a second. On the first day that we landed, I forgot to mention this, I think something landed right near our foxhole that first day.
Mhm.
Something, I don't know what it was.
Hand grenades?
It probably, might have been.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it was a hand grenade. It was an artillery shell, I think.
Mhm.
Landed near the foxhole. That was a little bit of
That woke you up?
frightening, too.
Yeah. Okay. When you got out of the service, what had you hadn't fully recovered from your trench foot, had you? Or had you?
I recovered to the point where it wasn't bothering me that much.
You could walk.
Oh, of course, yeah, I could walk.
Okay. And what did you do after the war? Where were you discharged, first of all? From Devon's?
At Devon's, I guess.
Okay.
No, Edwards. Camp Edwards.
Camp Edwards.
Camp Edwards.
Yeah, you went in at Edwards and you got out at
No, I went at Devon's.
Devon's.
Came out at Edwards.
Then you went out of Edwards, okay. That's known now as Otis Air Force Base.
Edwards.
Or else it's Camp Edwards, but the other half is Otis Air Force Base in Massachusetts. And,
I went to Tufts
yes,
on the GI Bill,
Mhm.
and I got my bachelor's and master's there.
in liberal arts,
Romance languages.
Romance languages.
Right.
So you utilized the GI Bill?
Yes, fully.
Okay.
And I'm very grateful for it.
And when did you...
And they paid me so much for being a disabled veteran. They
Did-
gave me a stipend every month.
They did.
Yeah.
And do you recall what the tuition was at Tufts when you went?
The what?
The tuition, how much was the tuition?
I have no idea because I didn't pay anything.
What year?
I went in 1945.
Well, I went there in 1954, and the tuition in 1954 was $550 a year. We thought that was outrageous, especially when it went up to $600. So in 45, it must have been a little bit under $500.
It must have been.
Yeah. So they paid your tuition, they paid your books,
I believe they paid the books too.
and they gave you a stipend.
Right.
And where did you live?
I lived at home, my parents.
So you commuted back and forth from
Right.
Medford to Winthrop?
Arlington, they lived in Arlington.
Arlington at that time. Okay. And did you, any time after your service ended, join any military organizations?
When I say military organization, AmVets,
AmVets, right.
yes.
ROTC. How about on-campus organizations like ROTC
No,
or
none of that.
veterans clubs or anything like
Not
that?
really, not really.
Did
The
you?
only affiliation I really had is AmVets, one of the founders of the Post, I believe.
Okay. But going back to Tufts, tell me how Tufts accepted you as a veteran going through their
Very good.
program. They did?
Right.
There was no anti-veteran feeling there?
No, not at all.
They accepted you?
No, because there were many, many veterans. When I went in, there were, the preponderance of the male students were veterans, probably,
Really?
because that was the time they were all getting discharged.
Okay. Now, you say you were one of the founders of Post 41 here.
Yes, I was one of the,
How did you learn of the existence of Post 41? How did you get together? How did you do it? What do you
I'm a little vague on that, to be
That's all
honest
right,
with you.
but whatever you recall.
I'm a little vague. All I remember was that Aram Conragan and Jack Mazurian and a few of us others were together, and they founded the Post. Now, I don't know why it was exactly at the beginning, but I was one of the early members.
Mhm.
But then I left, and I didn't live here for a while, so I wasn't active.
So you say Aram Conragan, is he the attorney?
Yes,
And he's still around,
I guess. I haven't seen him for years.
all right.
I see Jack once in a while.
So where were the meetings?
In Watertown somewhere, some building in Watertown, I don't remember exactly.
All right.
I
And
believe it was
what do the meetings consist of?
I don't remember.
Don't recall?
I don't remember if I
Did they serve meals like they do now?
don't remember.
Don't recall. Okay. So then you say you moved out of the area?
Yes, well, are we getting into the rest of my life?
No, no. I'm just trying to trace your affiliation with the Post.
Yeah, with the Post, I've been semi-active with the Post. I enjoy
Mhm.
coming to the Post,
Mhm.
and I come whenever I can.
Mhm.
In my business of life insurance and investments, I worked many, many nights, so I wasn't able to come as much as I could. Now I've slowed down a little bit, and I'm able to come a little more often. And I
Okay.
enjoy the meetings.
How would you counsel, this being the year 2003, how would you counsel any young fellow contemplating military service these days? Would you encourage them? Would you discourage them? What would you do?
Well, it's not a yes or no question,
Mhm.
Greg, because first of all, you'd have to know the person very
Mhm.
well. You'd
Mhm.
have to know what alternatives he has, what his chances of success are, what he really wants. So that's a very complicated thing. I don't think you can really counsel him. You can just
Mhm.
have him go to the people who are in charge of the military establishment, have him confer with someone there, and see if his idea of a career in the service is something that he wants to pursue. I wouldn't want.
Yeah.
I
You,
wouldn't
you,
dare
of course,
counsel.
today we also have a volunteer army.
Right.
don't
If-
we?
If a person wants to go in and suited for it, it could be a very good career. Some people found it very satisfying.
Mhm.
Others wouldn't go in for anything.
Yeah, they pursue a civilian career.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Right, right. Okay. Now, is there anything in this discussion that I haven't covered that you'd like to remark upon, like memorable experiences, humorous experiences, worthwhile experiences that you had during the war? Anything that you'd like to add?
Well, I think the only thing I can add is, as any experience, a military service is an experience from which you can gain a great deal of knowledge regarding people, because you have close interplay, association with people under all types of circumstances. So in that sense, it's good.
Mhm.
It makes a young man appreciate civilian life, because he's not under orders in civilian life as he would be in the service. And I think it's a good experience for everyone. And that's not just rationalizing. I think it's a very good experience for everyone. And I'm sure most veterans will agree with me.
Mhm.
A lot of young men who can't find their way in life with 1 or 2 years of military training will have everything to gain and nothing to lose,
Mhm.
especially in peacetime.
Mhm.
I think it's a worthwhile discipline for your
Mhm.
body as well as your mind.
Now, in World War II, do you think it was right for America to be at war, or should we have stayed out?
World War II,
Yes.
I think we had no choice. Hitler was going to take over the world, as I remember it.
Right. And did you trusted and supported your civilian and American civilian and military leaders during
Of course,
during your service? You had no question. You didn't question them.
no question at all.
Hmm. Because what you said was that some of these people who had been in the service much longer than you knew a heck of a lot more as to what to do.
As far as the procedures are concerned, certainly.
Yeah. Now, during your service in World War II, did you ever change your views of the span of the war? Because we are involved in a war in the Pacific, war in the Atlantic, Europe. Did you see any of this not coming to an end, or were you confident that we would win?
That's a good question. First of all, I didn't see as not ending. I didn't know when it was going to end, but I think I felt pretty sure that it would end.
At some time.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't conceive of a war that was going to go on forever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a question of when. Going back to World War I as a precedent, felt the wars come and they end.
Mm-hmm.
We thought this would end, and then we hoped that it would end soon, obviously.
You didn't think that we were being sunk into a morass that would never end?
No.
Yeah. So you were confident that it would end?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's what we felt.
Mm-hmm. And I've asked you what effect the war had on your physical and mental health, and from what I can gather, you had some physical problems with trench foot, and that you, so far as your mental capacity is concerned, you're still in business now, over 80 years old,
Exactly.
and you have a great mental outlook, which is very good. Did you keep a personal diary while you're in the service?
No.
And did you have the opportunity to have entertainers when you were overseas, or did you just entertain yourself whenever you could?
No, we had no entertainment at all.
Mm-hmm.
No, as I said, it was just front lines. That was it.
Just front line, okay. And you went on to Tufts. You had from there you went on into the insurance business.
I went to teaching for a couple of years, and then I went to the insurance business.
Okay. And was there any connection between your Romance language training, your Romance language education at Tufts, and your insurance?
Yes.
In the insurance business?
Because
What was
I went
that?
to Mexico, and I pioneered health and accident insurance for Mexican companies.
Mm-hmm.
So my knowledge of Spanish was important there.
Okay, so you learned Spanish at Tufts.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
French and Spanish.
All right. Okay, I think that I've asked you about all the questions that I can think about. Is there anything that I haven't covered? That's the
You've done a good job.
That's the important thing. Okay? And what I'm going to do now is simply end this. Hold on just a minute.
Thanks.
Okay. Since we have covered almost all the questions that I can think of, and that you have been able to recount, we're going to sign off now. This is Major Peter Abidian, Post 41 AmVets, on October 7, I guess it is, huh? Is it 17th?
Today's the 8th.
Today the 8th, October 8th. It's a beautiful sunny day in Watertown, Massachusetts. And we're going to sign off with Comrade Peter Abidian. And I want to thank you for participating in the Oral History Project.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you very
We'll
much.
sign off now.